Hey everyone, I'm Daryl Stringer. Welcome to episode 18 of the Builder Photography Business Show. This is where I help photographers like you with photography, marketing, and pricing. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to build your team if that's something that you'd like to do. And after that, we'll have an open question and answer time. So if you are watching live and you want to ask any questions about your own business, then drop any comments below this video at any time, and I might share your comment during the show. Now, before we get into that, I want to quickly mention something in the news that kind of got my attention recently, and it's from the World Health Organization. They released a report on the risks of working long hours, and I want to quote from this report rather than just share some of the media coverage on it. So here's what they said. In a first global analysis of the loss of life and health associated with working long hours, WHO estimate that in 2016, 398,000 people died from stroke and 347,000 from heart disease as a result of having worked at least 55 hours a week. They went on to say working 55 hours or more per week is a serious health hazard. It's time that we all wake up to the fact that working long hours can lead to premature death. Okay, so how does this relate to what we're talking about today? Well, if you are consistently working over 55 hours per week in your photography business, then really for the good of your health, something needs to change. And really, 55 hours per week is easily reached when you're a photographer because maybe you start in your office at 8 a.m. and you work until 5 p.m., you take a break, have dinner, catch up with the family, and then you go back to do another 2 hours or something of editing at night. And if you do that Monday to Friday, you're at 55 hours a week, and even more if you do extra work on Saturday and Sunday. So looking back at what I used to do around like 2004, 2005, before making some changes in my business, I was regularly doing 65, 75 hours a week, and it was really hard. So thinking through, like, what can you do to fix things when you get super busy? Well, one option is to raise your prices and do fewer jobs, but you bring your hours back to 40 to 50 hours a week, even though the same or more revenue is coming in, and that's a great place to be. The other option is to build a team so you don't have to do everything, but you have other photographers and video people and others who can do some of the work for you. Now, there's no right or wrong here as to which is best. Some people will prefer to work just for themselves and others want to build a team. It's up to you, and both choices can work really well, so there's nothing wrong either way. But if you want to build a team, then let's look at what you can do, because it can be really tough. And I'm speaking from experience here because I built a large team of photographers back when I was still shooting. So I went from just me and another family member up to a team of 6 photographers working for us in less than 5 years. Looking back with what I know now, I don't think I managed that as well as I could. And I would certainly do things differently now. So with that experience I now have, let's take a look at a process you might use to build your team. So let's talk about how to build a team. And I think the first question that often comes up here is, when should you start? Like, when do you go from just yourself to adding 1 or 2 or more team members? And here's what I'd say to that. As soon as you can, okay? As soon as you can. Now, this is where I go back to what I was talking about in the last episode of the Builder Photography Business Show, where I was talking about the importance of patience. So bringing it into this context, ideally what I think you want to be doing is reinvesting back into your business for as long as possible as you build things up. Now, you might be wanting to pull some money out of the business so you can buy that new car or put your salary up. But instead, if you're being patient, then you're going to be putting money back into the business. And one of the best ways to do that is to invest in people. The reason why I say that is that it can allow you to put your time into business development while you have other people doing more of the day-to-day stuff like shooting and editing. Or going the other way, if you don't like doing business development, then, well, first of all, maybe think about whether owning a business is really your thing. But if you do want to run your own business, then maybe you hire someone else to manage the growth of the business and you limit yourself largely to shooting. I mean, that really could work. But what's important here is to be patient about rewarding yourself and invest in people for your business as early as you can. So if you've decided that you want to build a team, then the first thing to do is to know your numbers in terms of what you're making from each photo shoot you do. I went through that in detail in a show called What Should You Charge for Real Estate Photography? And that's where I shared a formula for calculating your photography fee, and it looks like this. Business expenses plus your salary multiplied by your time spent shooting, plus your travel fee, plus your editing costs, plus the value that you deliver to the client, plus your profit margin. And when you add all that up, you get your fee. Now, when you start adding extra team members to that process, then your business expenses will increase. So you'll either want to adjust your pricing before you bring in new team members, or you'll change your prices when you bring them on board. And I think this right here is one of the biggest mistakes I made many years ago in my photography business. I did not charge enough when I was building my team. I think I kept my prices just too low for too long. And it's because I was thinking that the number of shoots per week was the most important thing. But I wasn't paying attention to my numbers and how much profit the business was making once we paid our team members and covered all the other costs. So this is definitely something that you'll want to dig into, and it might mean you need to increase your fee to make this dream of building a team viable for you over the long term. I'd really be pushing your prices right up there before you add another photographer, so you know you've got enough to cover all of those costs. You with me there? Okay. The second thing you want to do is to define your processes and expectations before you bring someone else on board. So in terms of photography, you need to have a clear process for how you shoot, and instead of just trying out different techniques all the time. You need to have a certain look and process for doing it that way. And then you need to be able to share that process with your new photographer. Or maybe you're the type of person who has different fees for different clients, or maybe you change things around all the time. Then before you start building your team, I think you really need to settle on your pricing structure so your new team members can share that with your clients and prospects. So think through how things run in your business, because systems become even more important as you expand. I mean, when it's just you in the business, you can kind of make stuff up on the spot because it's just you, right? But when you have a team, you want them to do things a certain way, and they can't do things right until you've really defined how to do things right. So really just make sure you define your processes and get clear on the role and functions that you want your new team members to fulfill. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me know if you've got any questions or comments about any of that so far. All right. The third thing you want to do after getting your numbers right and defining your processes is you want to start the process of finding the right people. And my first recommendation there is to go slow and not to rush through this. So you get yourself in a panic when you need to hire someone quickly. So I think you need to plan ahead so you avoid that. And I think that's why you should add new team members when your work is a little quieter. I know it can be tempting to think that you'll wait and make sure things get busy when they normally get busy in the spring or whenever. But if you wait until then, you're in a rush and you're going to accept second-rate people just because they're available rather than because they're the best people for your team. So you want to be looking ahead. Give yourself a few months if you need it, and take time to find the right team members. The second thing I'd say here is to hire the best people. And if you're looking at their criteria, I think I'd have their personal qualities as a more significant factor than their interior photography skills today. Because we can teach the skills most of the time, but things like their work ethic and their team focus and like their resilience, that's all stuff that can't be taught. Now, I went through a lot of photographers through my business, and the thing that really caused the most problems was not their skill sets, but their attitude. So when I had people with the wrong attitude on my team, it made a real mess and took up so much time and energy, and it just added like a whole lot of stress. Like it was really crazy. So this might sound really weird, but you want to look for the best people and not necessarily the best photographers. Now, hiring really good people and keeping them on your team is probably going to cost you because you need to be willing to offer a great salary or fee to pay a photographer or whatever they do to shoot for you and help out in your office or whatever it is. I mean, you can try and go cheap, but there are a few risks with doing that. First of all, the A-grade people that are really going to take your business far aren't going to be attracted to your cheap rates. So just like when you go cheap with your photography fee, when you go cheap with your wages, you attract low-quality talent that are going to be harder to deal with. Second of all, if you can somehow attract the top people on that low wage, they probably won't stick around for very long, and then you've got high turnover, and you've got this cycle of constantly looking for new team members to replace those you've lost. The third reason is around an issue that comes up a lot in this conversation. How do you stop people from leaving and going off to become a competitor of yours? And one way to do that is to pay them well and provide a fantastic work environment. So you're not going to be able to stop everyone, but if you need to hire photographers for your team, then look for people that want to be photographers and maybe not business owners. And honestly, there are a lot out there. Some people are just happy shooting great images and being part of a business that appreciates their skills. And if you can actually provide that, then your A-grade people will stick with you. All right, so how on earth do you find the best people for your team? To do that, you might need to cast a wide net and put some ads up on the job sites online. But you might also ask your photographer friends if they know anyone or if any of them are looking for some work. Maybe check in with some local wedding photographers to see if they'd like some extra work during the week. This kind of work could be great for them, especially if like you're managing the clients and they just need to come in and shoot and get paid, right? Also, try social media. So if you're not yet part of any of the real estate photography groups on like Facebook and elsewhere, then you might want to join some of those to find some ideal photographers in your area. But wherever you go, you want to see if there is anyone out there who would love to be paid well to just be a photographer or shoot videos or whatever it is that you want them to do, instead of worrying about being a business owner. And maybe that's a question like that you would want to ask your team members, like, what are your career ambitions? Are you happiest being a photographer, or do you want to be a business owner? So the people who just want to be creative might be the best fit for you. And I think there are a lot of fantastic people out there who would just jump at the chance to be a photographer or a videographer and have some fun within a supportive team. So I think that's a pretty compelling offer. If you can genuinely deliver on that, then you should be able to attract some pretty awesome people. Now, having said that, the last thing I'd recommend you do is invest in your new hire with your time. So rather than just bring them in and send them out to shoot for your clients straight away, I think you'll get a better result if you're absolutely thorough and clear with expectations so they know what you need from them. Now, this whole communication thing is super, super important. And you'll find that a common reason why good people don't fit with a company is because the company wasn't clear about what they should do. So you don't want to do that. So give them your time and you'll get it back in the end, even if it takes a couple of months to train them in how to work at the standard that you expect. Now, having said that, if your new hire doesn't meet your expectations, then you'll want to fire them quickly. Now, I mean, that might sound harsh, but honestly, you don't want to waste time on them if they're not going to get there. So take it slow when hiring someone, but move fast when it's obvious you need to fire them. I mean, you might feel reluctant to do that after you've invested a few days or a couple of weeks into training them, and you're hoping that they'll get there eventually. But if they join your team and you see them in action and it's clear that they're not the right fit, then I'd move them on and find someone else. Like it's all about getting the best people that you can on your team, not the best photographers, but the best people. And sometimes that means you need to fire fast. I know it's hard to sack someone because I've done it myself, but if your company is not a good fit for them and if they're better off elsewhere, and if your company is better able to serve your clients with other people on the team, and that customer service element is so important, then letting someone go because they aren't fitting in with you is just the right thing to do for everyone. All right, we'll get to some Q&A shortly, so drop any questions you have in the comments if you're watching this live. But in wrapping this up, if you want to build your team, here's what I do. First of all, know your numbers so you charge enough. Secondly, define your processes before you hire. Third, go slow. Hire the best people and not just the best photographers, and fire quickly if they aren't right. And finally, invest in your new team members with your time. Okay, now it's time for some Q&A. So if you're watching live, if you have any questions or comments about building your team and what you need to be doing, drop some comments below. If you're watching the replay of this video, you can drop any comments down below here too, and I'll definitely check back in with you just to address your questions or what you're wondering you should do. So if you do have anything to ask about building a team, and understand, like it's kind of complex. There's lots of variables. What your business needs is going to be different to what another business needs. I get that. But if you follow through this process that I went through today, I do think you give yourself the best chance at building a really good team that's going to work well for you. It's going to be great for them. And it's going to be really good for your clients. And I think that's the thing that we need to have like really at the top of your consideration is what's really best for your clients and how can you serve them and deliver the best possible results for them. I'm not seeing any questions come up at the moment, so I think we'll wrap things up and I'll check back in on any questions later on. Thanks everyone for joining in. Oh, hang on, someone has just dropped in a late comment. Let me just bring that up here. So they say, I think it's easy to bring someone on too quick if you are super busy, but it's important to be smart about it and hire the right person. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think that goes back to what I spoke about earlier in terms of the timing of this. So if you can like go through this process, maybe like a little bit before you desperately need someone, then you're not going to make that mistake of hiring them quickly when you're super busy. But you're going to be a bit more strategic about it, a bit more careful about who you go through or who you hire. And I think taking that process slowly and just being really thorough with the interview process and checking in on them and doing all of that, I think that's going to give you the best results in the end. All right, thank you for stopping by. Here's where you'll find me online. Let's just jump up here. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. Send me an email if there's anything I can do for you as well. And you can drop by my website if you want to get an email about whenever I'm doing more of these live calls, just so you're up to date with the latest content. All right, everyone. I will check in on this later and hope that was helpful. All right, bye for now.